Along the lines of that, if for all the insurance dudes, business dudes out there that want to perform at a high level, what are some things, eating, sleeping, workout, and things along the lines of a professional athlete would do? What are some things that they can do to perform their best at their job 24 hours?
Right. So, the first thing that, and I talk about this a lot, is that all excuses are lies, right? It's the Jocko Willink thing,
Yeah.
right? Is that, you can try to self-talk yourself into these different mindsets, but what works has been tried and true, right? I think one of the big challenges is that people is finding something that's enjoyable, number one, right? And because that's the thing that usually stops people. And this would be another one of my principles, right? Is you basically have to learn how to delay gratification. And it's one of the biggest challenges. You have to start figuring out how to embrace and enjoy the process, right? On some level, but you have to align that with something that you enjoy. Right. And so sometimes people make themselves miserable. And I know people that are fine with that, right? They're like, hey, I'm going to spend the next 20 years, my life's focused on making money, right? And not necessarily focused on their health and their well-being. But that ends up coming into play with even just how much money you're going to make. You're not going to do as well if you're in worse physical condition, because it's so connected to your cognitive performance. You'll never know where your ceiling is and where your peak is if you're not at your physical functioning best. Right. And I think that that whole idea of being sustainable for the long term is the big issue. Most of our failures when it comes to behavioral change and any type of process that somebody's going to engage in to try to improve their performance with something, they end up using programs or tactics that aren't sustainable. And those tactics and programs, they're just not as attractive all the time, right? But the attractive ones are usually being, sold by the snake oil salesman. And that's why I always come back to, it's like, well, that's one of the reasons why physical therapists aren't in the mainstream, because what we do isn't sexy a lot of the time, right? People don't want to do these, basic band exercises and all of those things. So you guys will know this too with anything that is successful. You have to start out with some type of needs analysis, right? Or an evaluation. And again, coming back to those pro athletes, that's one of the reasons why they bring experts in like me, is so I can help them evaluate their situation and do specific assessments to determine what needs need to be addressed and where we're going to intervene, and putting those things in a priority list. So that ends up being the problem with the sustainability. You typically don't start with the end in mind. And then when you do get started, you don't start with an evaluation. So you're not getting the feedback that you need. And then you're not reassessing as you go. So when you look at motor learning and functional training and really just success in general, you look at business, you have to be getting feedback or metrics or something to determine where your functional progress is actually being made. So, or your lack of functional progress, because otherwise you're just playing a guessing game. There's a really good book by Patrick Lencioni called The Advantage, and it's all about basically human resources and organizational health. And that's one of the things that he talks about, is that if you're not getting the correct feedback, especially like from your boss or your higher ups, then you're going to start hallucinating. Right. You're going to start. I always joke around. It's kind of like if you guys went out of town to Las Vegas this weekend and you're basically out till 4 a.m. and you haven't called your wives. Right. What are they going to start thinking? Right. They want that phone call so they can go, Jason and Craig, they're cool, man. They gave me that call. I know where they're at. No worries. They don't want to. Yeah, maybe at this point they don't even want to talk to you. Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. But they do want that feedback to know what's going on, right? So if they don't get that feedback, they start going nuts. And that's kind of, again, this is the same thing what I was talking about, the anxiety that happens with the athletes. They're not getting the correct feedback, and they know, right? They know when there's more information to be gathered at that point. With that said, you have to start taking action sometimes when you don't have all of the information, right? So having somebody that can help point you in the direction, or following a curriculum or a program or something that was created by somebody that has an expertise or an experience with this stuff is huge for that.